So, Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you all for joining the session. It's just after 5 past, so I think we should actually begin. So what I'm going to say is, first of all, we'll say Mangalacharyan. Then I'm going to hand over to Balaram Nityananda, who's going to actually lead us in the Guruvastakam, or let's say sing it through, because I know sometimes when you're trying to do everything together on Zoom, the sound doesn't actually work out. So he'll just lead and go through the Guruvastakam. Then what we want to do is an elaboration on and a discussion of some of the key points from this most essential prayer that Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya, has given us. Okay, and I just want to say also thank you for joining. We also see a few people, who we know, but part of the wider group who are coming on. So really good to see all of you again. Everyone is welcome as always. So let's say Mangalacharyan first, then Balaram Nityananda. I'm going to ask you to lead Guruvastakam, and then we're going to discuss. Okay. Gyanatimurandasya Gyananjana Shilakaya Chakshum Militam Yanatasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Badakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragnatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam. Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam. Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishikam Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakapatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Japtitnam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So welcome to the session. Thank you for joining, and I'll just say up front, thank you for being part of the group. This series that we're doing is very, very meaningful for a number of reasons. There are literally countless prayers and hymns of great Vaishnavas, great Acaryas, pure devotees of the Lord, who, as they've been visiting this earth planet in order to deliver the fallen conditioned souls who come as Krishna's eternal associates, their prayers provide us with literally a gateway back to the spiritual world. And of those myriad of prayers, our present founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, has selected specific prayers which he's deemed to be most important and essential for us to know, to recite, and to dive into. And these prayers constitute specific prayers throughout various times of the day. So for example, even when we take prasadam, we'll sing certain prayers by Bhattivinoda Thakur, thanking the Lord for this prasadam. But particularly these prayers perform or set the foundation and therefore the dhyan, the meditation of our day. Because what we do in the beginning sets the mood and the tone for the entire day. And so we have various prayers. Last week we looked at the Guru Puja prayers, Guru Vandana prayer. But today we're also going to be exploring the Guruvastakam. We'll be exploring some of the subject matter. And what I said last time, and I really mean this, I would like to request all of you to learn these prayers. Learn these prayers so that when you recite them, either in your home or in the temple, you're not only reciting them with your lips, but the mind is also engaged in that service. So you understand what you're saying, you understand why you're saying this. And we mentioned in our previous session, and this is something I picked up in a class by my own spiritual master, and I've seen this work in my own life. One of the biggest traps that we face as devotees is mechanical devotional service. Mechanical devotional service happens when we lack awareness and lack understanding of what we're doing and why. So one of the purposes of this series is to lift us outside of this automatic devotional practice where we come to the temple, we know the words because everyone else is saying it. I have no idea what it means. I have no idea the significance of it. Therefore, I'm just going through the motions, but my mind and my intelligence is elsewhere. As a result, I'm less absorbed. And because I don't understand the significance of what I'm saying, I'm not really able to call out to those Acaryas, to those pure devotees who have given us this gift, because when I'm saying, I have no idea what's really going on. Now, we should say that because these prayers are given by pure personalities, they do carry their own independent potency, just like the holy name, right? We hear this, Harinam Chintami Bhaktivinoda Thakur, even if the name is chanted in derision, even if it's done in ignorance, no understanding, still the syllables will act. That's true. But how much more that they will act when they are consciously engaged with. And the same goes for these particular prayers. They have independent power, but when we engage heart, body, mind, soul, everything, intelligence in these prayers with a deep understanding of what we're saying and why, deep understanding of who we're calling out to. We're calling out to the spiritual master, calling out to Srila Prabhupada, the effect will be amplified. So this is the magic of spiritual life. You can do the same activity, the same amount of time, the same amount of energy, and get a far superior outcome if we are now able to engage more of us. My intelligence, my heart, my emotions, my mind, if we're able to engage much more of us in that particular activity, and this gateway, the gateway from moving from mechanical devotional service to conscious devotional service, there's many gateways, but one of them is awareness and understanding. And we can understand this also, right? If you look at it, you can understand this through the teachings themselves. If I do devotional service and I lack awareness, it means that there is some influence of the mode of ignorance. I'm just doing it. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm unaware and I'm uneducated, but I'm still doing it. So we know this lack of awareness, this lack of understanding, this constitutes ignorance. But when I'm doing that same devotional service in knowledge, and Prabhupada writes about this in Krishna book, if I remember, and Srimad Bhagavatam. If I'm doing devotional service and I know the prayers, I know why I'm saying the prayers, I know what the translation means, I know exactly what I'm actually calling out, and I have a remembrance based upon that, then I'm increasing the standard of goodness within my devotional service, which means that devotional service becomes more powerful, becomes more enlivening, becomes easier. Devotional service is practiced easier in the mode of goodness, and it's more absorbing because I've got an internal meditation as well as a meditation on my lips. I'm saying something, but I'm also thinking something. Oh yes, this verse is translated this. So when I'm calling out these words in Sanskrit, I know what I'm actually saying. So I want to give you these two things. We'll go into the Guruvastakam, but that's a principle. If you want to lift any aspect of your spiritual life into a higher level, you simply need to look at that area and really try to understand it. It's the same thing with the holy name. I've been listening to this wonderful seminar by Shiv Ramaraj on the Shikshashtakam. It's all about the holy name. And he explains in great detail. So when you're chanting, it has a completely different significance. Because you're chanting the name, but you know what this means, you know why you're doing it, you know what stage you are at. I mean, it just changes everything. And we wish this for all of the devotees in our spiritual community. I had a very interesting experience over this period of the pandemic. And I experienced something even within my own mind. And what I experienced within my own mind was that the more that my mind was in goodness, I saw that it was naturally more attuned to a certain type of knowledge, a certain type of lifestyle, and a certain type of association. And I was able to make a comparison. And I realized that actually in the world, if as devotees, we're living more in a sattva mood, in a sattva mode, you find that you're naturally attuned to certain things and you lose taste for things which are in lower modes. It's because for every single one of us, our consciousness is attuned to a certain frequency. And at that frequency, there's certain people who we're attuned to. There's certain activities that we're attuned to. And there's also people, activities, and situations that we tune out of. So sometimes devotees struggle to let go of watching mundane things on the TV or online. They struggle. And one of the easiest solutions is to tune in to a higher mode. You see, that's actually what's going on. And that's also why sometimes some people, you tell them about Krishna consciousness, they're immediately able to understand it. And other people, you tell them they struggle to understand. It's because of the level of consciousness and what they are tuned into and what they're tuned out of. Okay? So anyway, we're going to stop there. I'm going to ask if Balaram Nityananda can be spotlighted. I'm going to ask Balaram Nityananda if you would take us through the Guruvastakam. I'm going to put the words on the screen as well. Actually, no, I won't. We can. Let me just ask Rajanath Gopal. I don't believe that there's a way that we can we have both Balaram and also the words, if I share the words, or is it better to be shared by someone else? Let me just check in with you before we take it a step further.
We could try sharing the words at the same time. Let's see how it goes.
So in that case, I'm going to share my screen and then we'll see how we go from there. So let me just do that now.
Guru Shri Charanarvindam Sakshat Haridvena Samasra Shastre Uktasya Tavaya Daegosarvi Kintu Prabodya Priyaya Bhatasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavan Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Gutomi Yayam Stavam Stasyayam Sri Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Namo Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Brahmacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vasyadya Deshadarini Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Rama
Thank you very much, Balaram Nityananda, for leading us in the prayers. So this is, a very foundational prayer, very wonderful prayer. And we want to go through this verse by verse and just start to elaborate on some of these points. And as I said at the beginning, one of the key takeaways from this session and this whole series is that we're meant to become conscious before we can become Krishna conscious. When we say these prayers which we've been given, there's a meditation in these verses. And as I said, if we're conscious when we're reciting these verses, you make much faster advancement. It's heartbreaking to see the number of devotees who come to Krishna consciousness. They practice it mechanically. And because they practice it mechanically, they do not progress at the speed in which they could. And when they don't progress at the speed at which they really could, they start having doubts about the process. They'll start thinking, I've been practicing for this period of time, and it doesn't seem to be moving forward in the way that I would expect. Now, of course, at that point, there's meant to be a diagnosis. Okay, why? Is it that I'm just being impatient, right? Because I'm not letting things progress in the way they could? Or is it that I could have progressed faster, but I've been making offenses, right? Or is it I could have progressed faster, but I'm doing my devotional service more in the mode of ignorance or in the mode of passion? And of course, we don't beat ourselves up about it. We're trying to understand what's the situation because we're looking for the solution, And sometimes what will happen, and this is again why spiritual life is so exciting and dynamic if we do it properly, Krishna can give you help, and he'll do it according to our desire and our endeavor. What does that mean? It means that wherever I am, however I want to move forward, it's simply me showing Krishna that I'm serious by taking that step forward. It could be studying the teachings to understand more about what I'm doing and why. It could be asking my guru or senior devotees, where do you think I could improve? It could be praying to the Guru, praying to the Lord, praying to his associates, please help me to progress forward. And I'm telling you honestly, if you knew some of the experience devotees are having, you'd be incredibly excited. It's the process is so damn powerful. It's ridiculous. Right now, anyway. Yeah, I know devotees who have all kinds of experiences in spiritual life, and it's real. So we should try to do everything we can to move forward and to experience this, especially at this time. And you'll never miss out. Okay. Anyway, let's just start in looking at these verses and expanding on some of the points here. So I'll read the first verse translation. So here, the spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water onto a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities. There's a lot in all of these verses. There's a lot here. So we're going to try and unpack it, and we'll see how we go in terms of time. Maybe we'll have some time for questions as well at the end. But I really want you to tune into this. It's not just what we're picking out of the verses itself, but it's the tendency to be conscious in our devotional practices. Okay? So by bringing out the meaning, you'll find that when you recite these prayers in the future with an understanding of the meaning, you'll find that automatically it will keep your consciousness in a higher mode. Okay, so the spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. So this prayer is given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who's written different books, different literatures to enlighten Krishna consciousness for the masses, for all of us. I remember the first time I went to India, year 2000, there was a seminar by Prahladananda Maharaj on the Madhurya Kadambini, which was written, as this prayer is written, by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. It was one of the best seminars I'd ever heard, and he was going through various different points. Now, in this first statement, the spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. You can correlate this back to a statement or statements which are made in Madhurya Kadambini. I remember this, it was such a strong impression. I remember we were having a discussion based upon the statement Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes. He says that Krishna gives his mercy to his devotees to distribute on his behalf. And the mercy of the devotee is not to be, the partiality of the devotee is not to be considered a fault. So here we understand from this point that there is this ocean of mercy, and that ocean of mercy is actually unlimited, and it's actually from Krishna. And that access, that mercy potency is being given through the spiritual master to the devotees, right? So he's receiving benediction. And then what does it say? Just as the cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. The words which are used by the pure devotees, as you get into scripture, and as we get into analyzing, you'll see that they're inspired internally. They're inspired by their bhava, by their feelings for the Lord. But there's also a direct correlation between so many things that they'll say and so many other points in the scripture. In other words, our entire teachings are what we call internally coherent, okay? And I'll give you just one example. So even the analogies which are used, blazing fire of material existence, so fire. So what do you see with a fire? With a fire, you see this great heat, but you also see this great light, okay? So throughout history, people have used torchlight, okay? They've used or candlelight. They've used light to kind of draw attention to something, right? So sometimes if people are stuck and they're in the military, they may use a flare, right? So they'll light a flare, and by the flare, people who are searching for that individual can see. Now, these are good examples of using light. There's also the other side. There's also the light that attracts, let's say, like a moth or a butterfly to a fire, and then they get burnt. So the blazing fire of material existence is like a light that attracts us. More specifically, that blazing fire means passion, actually. It means passion. The passion of the material world is the lure. Come in, there's something here. You'll be happy. So we're drawn in because of this kind of bright, passionate energy. But the fire also produces something else, right? So if someone is trapped in the fire, it's not exactly the fire that kills them. In many cases, it's also the smoke, right? The fact that they may suffocate, the situation with the air. So the smoke, that black smoke, the ashes, the soot, that's ignorance. So the material world, the intense passion, the intense ignorance, all of this is a bad situation, but it's a situation, not only is it bad, but unfortunately it's alluring. So it has this tendency to try to draw people in, blazing, to draw people, come in here. Material existence, there's something that you can enjoy here. And the only way to pull it out is with Krishna consciousness. That ocean of mercy received through the spiritual master. And we also know from scripture that material existence means adi atmika, adi daivika, adi bautika klesha. Now, one thing I'm going to say to you, just being very open and honest, don't think that these troubles are just things that will happen when you interact with people who are materialistic outside the spiritual community. These troubles will also exist within spiritual community. Because as long as someone is conditioned, a conditioned living entity, there'll be challenges from the false ego. So the first verse is really setting the scene. It was interesting, what the class I was listening to this morning, the point that came up was that in order to really progress, one has to get the dust of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Okay? Now it's interesting, because oftentimes when we read things like that, we'll take it literally. And there is value in taking it literally. We want to go to Vrindavan. We do want to get the dust of the Lord and his associates on our head. But that statement, the dust of the lotus feet of Krishna, it actually also has been explained by Acaryas that it means the association and the mercy of those who are, of the devotees who are also situated on the same platform as Krishna. You see? It means the mercy of pure personalities. You see? The dust of Krishna's lotus feet means the mercy of devotees who are always with Krishna, Krishna's pure associates. We're looking for their mercy in order to progress, but it's not enough to take their mercy. I want to draw your attention to the last line, and it's the same last line of every sentence, every verse we'll go through. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities. So let's just look at this. First of all, this idea, and we do have this often, that whatever we do, Krishna accepts. It's not quite like that, to be honest. We're making an offering, okay? What Krishna accepts or doesn't accept, that is his own free choice. At the same time, we see the same thing here. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. There's a sentence of Prabhupada places, I think it's in the purport to Bhagavatam, or it may be elsewhere, but he's making the point about we do not want the familiarity that breeds contempt. So what we want to do in spiritual life, by having this mood of respect, by having this understanding that we're making an offering, not that whatever I offer, he has to accept it. It keeps us or helps us to cultivate a very humble mentality. And that same mood that we begin to practice here will be even more essential as we progress in spiritual life. One of the secrets of spiritual life is that we're meant to develop both an activity and a mood. And the mood is one of begging. So we're making an offering. It doesn't mean people have to accept it. You see, again, you can see this mirrors what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, because he says you do your duty and don't become attached to the result. That means you make your offering, you make the offering. What's done with the offering, the result of the offering, it's not down to us. So as we go deeper into the prayers, we're also understanding this is how a pure devotee thinks. Many of us, even in spiritual life, we struggle to act properly and we struggle to be enthusiastic, especially when we try something and it doesn't work. We tried to do some preaching program, it didn't work. And my enthusiasm's a bit dented. I'll try something else, or I tried to join this Sangha of devotees and it didn't work. I had some issues with the devotee. But if we understand that it's not about the result, it's about the offering. It's about me doing my best. You know what happens? Your enthusiasm actually increases, because independently of the result, the question then becomes, did I offer the best that I can? So even the construction of these verses, these sentences, these prayers, literally everything is relevant. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities. I'll add one other thing here before we go on to the next verse. And that is that when you are in the association of pure personalities, you are automatically also in the association of Krishna. Because wherever the pure personality is, Krishna will also be there. He doesn't leave his pure associates. And therefore the spiritual energy that they carry, it literally means that certain miracles can happen just in their presence, and miracles can happen by their will. You know, I cannot stress enough for all of you, if you want to have a really amazing spiritual life, I beg you, and I'll be honest, I don't understand why it's not spoken about more within our movement. Whenever possible, always look to see and try to arrange your life that wherever possible, you can actually have the direct association of pure devotees. Don't think that it's a nice to have. Something very interesting happens in spiritual progress. In the beginning, we have some understanding that it's important to associate with devotees, right? So we say Shraddha, then we say Sadhu Sangha. But what actually happens is that the more we progress in spiritual life, the more you take shelter of advanced and pure devotees, not less. Materially, what happens is you think, okay, I'm more expert in something, so now I can just roll independently. But spiritually, while obviously doing whatever duties you have to do, the more that someone progresses in spiritual life, the more they actually feel themselves to be dependent on the association of pure devotees, the more that they'll deliberately make time and energy to go for that specific type of association. Okay, let's go to this next one, this next verse. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments, the spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. So, this verse, this prayer, Narottam Das Thakur, Golokera Pramadana Harinam Sankirtan. So it's considered that the holy name came, right? We sometimes hear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give the holy name, and he appeared on the earth 500 years ago, and that's true. But the holy name, especially the Hare Krishna mantra that we chant, it was here before Lord Chaitanya appeared on the earth, right? The actual Hare Krishna Maha mantra was present on the planet and was being chanted on the planet before the descent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So what do we mean when we talk about this? What we mean was at the time before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's descent, the holy name was there in the form of the Hare Krishna Maha mantra, but it was only being chanted by a certain select number of people, small number of people. It wasn't being spread all over the world. That's one factor. The second, and this is really important, was the conception behind the chanting, right? So the understanding at that time with the chanting, I will go to Vaikuntha, right? So there was both the practice and the meditation, the understanding of what this chanting is aligned with, what it will entail and where it will take me, okay? With the advent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it changed. So the Maha Mantra, as given by him in his line, it doesn't take us to Vaikuntha. If it's chanted properly, with proper understanding and proper devotional practice, in following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is none other than Radha and Krishna, what are we doing? We're following we're following the Lord and his associate, right? Radharani is the topmost devotee of Goloka Vrindavan, right? She's Aradhana, the topmost worshipper of the Lord. So in following Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we're following Radha and Krishna. We're actually following in the line of Vraj Bhakti, devotion to the divine couple in Vrindavan. And this is actually a very, very confidential offering. This is so confidential, even Lakshmi Devi herself, this is not what she is attuned to. This is what we're being offered. Interestingly enough, this point also about chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. So it's all talking about a whole range of different activities which constitute Sankirtan. So chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing, playing musical instruments. What this means is literally this prefix, S-A-N, san. It means everything can be engaged in the glorification of the Lord. Everything. And we can take this as a metaphor. It's not just even these particular items which are mentioned, your body, your mind, your intelligence, your association, your money, literally everything that an individual has can be engaged. And it's interesting, the spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement. We should be very clear about this. We need to develop a higher taste in spiritual life in order to go for it with more enthusiasm. It's really important because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. And then he goes on to talk about some of the ecstatic symptoms. So we have to ask ourselves, how will I develop a taste for spiritual life? What are the activities that I can do more of that will give me more enthusiasm in spiritual life? What are the activities that I may need to minimize? And one other point on this, and I'm going to really emphasize this to you, where can I make some sacrifice for Krishna? Unfortunately, as a community, sometimes we're stuck with certain statements by Prabhupada. And when I say stuck, I mean we hear something coming in and it's an entry-level instruction, but we hold on to it forever. So Prabhupada says at the beginning, just add Krishna. And then you'll find devotees who've been around 10, 20, 30 years, and they're still just adding Krishna. No, that's an entry-level instruction. Yes, you add Krishna at the beginning, but if you add Krishna properly at the beginning, then you want to add more Krishna as you move along the journey. So the idea here is we want to see what can I let go of in order to make more space for me to come closer to Krishna, for me to hear more, read more, serve more. So as you let go of some of the external or more material elements in our lives, it creates room. It creates room for us to spend more time, more energy, and more absorption in spiritual. And there's two sides to this. One is more the external, letting go of things which are taking our time and energy unnecessarily. But there's also certain things that we have to do in our lives. But even there, what we can think is, how can I do this more efficiently, right? How can I take care of some of my, let's say, household responsibilities more efficiently? So it doesn't, so instead of taking 3 hours, it now takes 1 hour. And with those additional 2 hours, I can actually engage in more direct devotional practice or devotional service. So efficiency and effectiveness. And Krishna sees that willingness to trade the material for the spiritual. And as we said before, yeyatamam prapadyante. As he sees that, there is also more reciprocation that comes. So this point about understanding all of the different elements that we've been asked to take care of by Krishna. So we're not the proprietor, we're the caretaker. And it's a very powerful meditation to have also. It's powerful to meditate on how nothing is mine. At the time of death, some of us, because of attachments that we've held on to, when the time of death comes, we often talk about it being attached to people. It's not just that though. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. We can also be attached to things. We can also be attached to things. Our house, our estate, right? Our nation, our country, our race, all of these things, be very clear, this is all materialistic conception. So even if we come to the point of death and we've got attachments to things or people, that will also become an anchor for us to come back into the material world, okay? And one of the ways to overcome this is that in our state now, everything that we are utilizing, we could practice this as a meditation. It will be perfected at higher stages, but we can practice it at a lower stage. Okay, I'm looking after Krishna's phone, Krishna's laptop, Krishna's home. This is one of the reasons why we also, and I'll come to this a bit later on, actually in the next verse, or maybe we'll touch upon it now. This is the whole idea behind deity worship. When you install the deity, when you bring the deity to your home, you're recognizing that this is not your home, it's Gaura Nitai's home. Right? It's Nishingadev's home. And we can start having that mentality. We can even speak like that. You know? Don't think that this doesn't make a difference. It makes a difference. Again, what it does is it triggers more the mode of goodness. I have this detachment. I'm looking after Krishna's activities, Krishna's opulences, Krishna's items. And as I have this detachment, because I meditate like this, I can see things more easily. I can also see things with more psychological space. So when something comes, fantastic, I'll use it in Krishna's service. When something leaves, it's Krishna's. I'm not disturbed by it. A lot of the pain that we suffer in spiritual life is because we know one thing and we do something else. There's a statement, let go and let God. You see, our spiritual progress is also a function of our detachment from the material world. You see, if we're too enamored by the things of the material world, it's hard to really develop a taste for the spiritual. Okay, so material attachment, one area. Spiritual attachment, the other area. There's a middle area, which is spiritualize. Right? So now the things that I've got a strong attachment to, I'm going to engage them in Krishna's service. So that's yukta vairagya. That's engaging the material elements in Krishna's service alongside another anga bhakti, alongside the direct devotional practices. It's not one, it's actually both. Okay? Of course, another anga bhakti is more important. You can just do that if you're that qualified. If you're that qualified, you can just engage in direct devotional service, end of story. There's a very famous letter that Prabhupada wrote. I believe it was to Tamal Krishnaraj. Prabhupada said, our only business is to chant Hare Krishna. He said, but who can do that? He said, that's why I'm engaging you in so many other activities. I sometimes, unfortunately, and let's just be very real, it's just where sometimes we are as devotees. Sometimes, unfortunately, we'll see devotees and whatever they're attached to, they'll present it as if it's the highest thing, right? So if I'm attached to doing lots of external things, I will say that, yes, that's how you know that someone is a great devotee. Not necessarily. It can be, it may not be. It's why are you doing that? Are you doing it purely to serve Krishna? Or is it because you're dovetailing something you have an attachment to in Krishna's service? I want to encourage at least my mentees and everyone actually. We don't need to be fake in spiritual life. There's nothing wrong with just being, this is where I'm at. You know, to be honest, it's unfortunate when we feel so, when our communities are so artificial that people need to pretend in order to feel appreciated. That's not good. And the reason why it's not good is because this is really important also, because to make progress, we have to shed layers. And to shed layers, we have to be able to be open and honest in the association of sincere devotees who can help us, you know? So when we create an environment where people are fake, inauthentic, then we actually stunt our ability or the ability of each other to move forward in a healthy way. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you have to go and tell everything to everyone, but you want to have devotees in your life who are sincere, who you can be honest with, and have a deep, heartfelt exchange. And it's not that you have to just go to them every time there's a problem either. We want to celebrate everything, our successes and our challenges. So we want to learn from each other to move through our challenges. And we want to celebrate with each other our successes. You know, that's what you want in spiritual life. You want to feel good about spiritual life. Look again at this sentence. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You want to engage in spiritual life in a way that you find inspiring, so that you can keep going. Because he's relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. We've all heard this before. Tears flow from his eyes like waves, right? We've heard this before. Where have we heard this? Shikshashtakam. Shikshashtakam. Lord Chaitanya expressing that mood. Vipralamba bhav. This mood of separation, right? The world feels absent in your the world feels vacant in your absence, right? I'm feeling one moment to be like 100 years or more, whatever it is, 12 years or more, right? This is actually what we're trying to aspire towards. It's interesting But even at the stage of a sakti, we're not at the level of transcendental devotional service. A sakti is the high stage of devotional service within the mode of goodness. Bhava is devotional service in transcendence. So there's a huge journey, but it's a great adventure. Think about that. If you think about it, it's a long journey and it becomes demotivating, it's not good. But if it's a great adventure where you're being helped along the way by who? By this personality, by Guru plural, by the way. It's not just the Diksha Guru. It's Diksha, Shiksha Guru, Vatma Pradashika Guru. That means the person who first told us about Krishna. Is Shravana Guru, the gurus that we hear from. It's a devotional community. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but there's paradigms that you can have in spiritual life that can help. And I've practiced using this one. If in spiritual life, we take what we call a family model, I consider that in any situation, I take that mood of a family. So these are my mothers, these are my fathers, these are my father, my aunts, my uncles, etc. If we have this vision, then when you're dealing with someone and there's a challenge, you can understand it and you can think it through very easily, right? My auntie said something, that's really good. She said something that helped me to understand what my father said. Great. And I deal with her as an auntie. Family mood. So then it doesn't get weird. It doesn't become overly averse. It doesn't become overly attached. It's members of my family. It's a very healthy grounding in terms of how we deal in spiritual community as well. And through dealing with the devotees properly, we accrue their mercy. Because again, Guru is plural. All the devotees have some mercy to give. And as we accrue their mercy, we progress in our spiritual life. Okay. The one other thing I'll add here is that in the association of advanced devotees, our faith also grows. But it's not just association. It's association and having the right mentality. So you may have association of pure devotees, but are you respectful of that association? The word respectful or respect, the part of the word, the suffix spect, comes from spectacular, spectacles. It means literally to see. So there's a connotation here about having proper appreciation for the devotees that we are in the association of. And the converse is also true. If we don't properly deal with the devotees, it will actually bleed into Vaisnava Parad. It bleeds into Guru Avagya. By having an offensive mentality towards devotees, if one does not give that up, that offensive mentality over time will spill over into having an offensive mentality towards the spiritual master. And then it's considered that one is doomed if one goes in that direction. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gives the way of avoiding this is that we engage the tongue in the appreciation of others. Okay? Therefore, respectful obeisances. That mood of respectful obeisances to all the devotees. Let's go to the next verse. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. Temple worship means anywhere, any situation, like your home is a temple. If the deities are there, the home is a temple. But at the same time, temple worship has a special significance. So there are different atmospheres which are created by different activities. And people who are a bit more sensitive, they know this, right? You go into certain environments and you can feel a particular mode predominates. So if you go to a shopping center, you can get a sense of the passion. People are coming there, they want to buy something, they want to consume, they want to enjoy. Hopefully the home environment is more sattvic and so on. But Prabhupada said that the temples are embassies. Why? Because the number and the degree of direct devotional activities that take place in that environment, it surcharges the environment. When you go into environments which have a huge amount of spiritual energy, right? So for example, you go to the temple, not only are there deities, but they're installed deities. right? Fully installed. Not only are they fully installed deities, but they're receiving full worship. Not only are they receiving full worship, but they're receiving full worship throughout the entire day. It's not a part-time affair. So because Krishna is reciprocating, then the potency of the Lord's presence in that environment becomes very, very strong. And when we go into those environments, we're therefore availing ourselves of that purification, of that stronger degree of spiritual energy. So this blazing fire of material existence, there's also a blazing fire of spiritual existence. And one fire will put out the other, ironically. So in spiritually surcharged environments and around spiritually surcharged individuals, we also gain tremendous blessings and benefit and can move on. Okay, so let's move on. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. So he also engages his disciples in such worship. This means bringing people to Krishna. This is when you have a father and you're a member of a family, and your brothers and sisters have not only rejected your father, but they've run away from your father. They've run away from our parents. And not only have they run away from our parents, they've left the family home. But in leaving the family home, they've moved into the world. You sometimes see this. There was a documentary, and it was about one individual who was homeless. And the person was from a very well-to-do family, from an extremely wealthy family. But they'd rejected their family. They were living rough. They were living homeless. And so people from that aristocratic, high society circle, one of them saw the individual, and at first, because the person looked disheveled, unclean, dirty, they thought maybe I'm imagining it. But when they looked more closely, they could realize, hold on, that's the billionaire's son. And so they kind of, started to speak to the person, aren't you so-and-so's son? Like, how can you be living like this? What are you doing living rough? Your dad's a billionaire. What happened? And unfortunately, we're in a similar situation. We're in a similar situation. And many people like to feel good about themselves because their idea is that the homeless person, I gave them, some money, I gave them some snacks, I gave them a little bit of food. But that's not really doing the best for that person. It's a real comparative analysis. If the person was a beggar and they had nothing to go back to, you could understand people saying, I've done a lot for them because I gave them a little bit of food, etc. But when you know that they're actually from a billionaire family, and that the moment that they reconnect with their family members, everything is automatically included, then in a sense, giving them a bit of money is not really doing much for them. And this is the comparison between mundane charity service and transcendental service, which is reconnecting living entities with Krishna, engaging those living entities in Krishna's worship. So this sentence, he also engages his disciples in such worship. That's the heart of it. In other words, what that means for us is that every time you help someone to access Krishna, you're performing the same activity. Whether you tell them about Krishna, whether you give them prasadam that has been offered to Krishna, whether you chant the holy names in Harinam and they hear that, whatever it is, however you connect an individual to Krishna, you're literally engaging them in the worship of the Lord. You're helping the homeless individual to overcome their anxiety, their amnesia, and to understand once again, oh, yeah, you're part of that family. You're part of a very wealthy, very rich family. And therefore, the best thing to do, the best thing we can do for you is to help you to go back home, help you to return to your actual family, so you are no longer suffering in the situation that you're in. That's what the guru does. And that's actually what every Vaishnava does, because every devotee is a guru. Okay, in that sense. Anyone who tells you about Krishna is guru. Huh? That's what Prabhupada means when he actually says, when he was quoting Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, okay, on my order become guru and save this land. Huh? Amar Agyaya Guru. Right? So that's the point. It's that point. So everyone has the same responsibility. Okay, let's move on. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad, he is satisfied. So food has a real significance for us because, there's a verse. What's the first verse of Nectar of Instruction? How does it begin? The Nectar of Instruction about the tongue, belly, genitals. I can't remember how it goes actually. Manasakroda Vegam, that's it. Jiva Vegam, Darapasta Vegam, Etam Vegam, your Vishaheta Dira, Salvam Apimam Privivimsha Shishyat. That's the verse, thank you. So yes, Vacho Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam. See, there's actually a need to control the mind, the senses, the tongue, the belly, etc. But how? Do you know how to do it? The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food. One of the easiest ways in which we can help society is by offering them mercy in a form that they can appreciate. Do you see the point? There's a formula here. It's not just mercy. It's not just mercy. It's mercy. Okay, that's about Krishna. It's about giving them something substantial, right? But because we want them to accept, then within boundaries, right? We don't want to give them something that's unhelpful. We want to give them mercy in a form that they can accept. So it has to look like something that they desire, okay? Therefore, Bhagavad Prasad. Bhagavad Prasad. Everyone likes food because they're looking at it, this is something that I'm gonna enjoy. Look at this, 4 kinds of delicious food. Huh? Krishna consciousness is literally the highest sense gratification. And that's true though. That's not like a clever statement. At higher stages, when we chant, at higher stages, you relish of chanting, you can immediately feel this is blissful. It's not, I gotta get my rounds done. It's like, I chant, this is blissful. I feel it's blissful. Because the holy name is blissful. Devotional service is blissful, but we don't taste the bliss because of conditioning. You see? And Prabhupada talks about the jaundice of the tongue. So there's like the jaundice of the mind. Right? And you'll know, and we'll all know this, because as we progress in spiritual life, the time will come when we're chanting and it just immediately feels like this is delicious, this is amazing. The actual nature, believe it or not, the actual nature of everything we do in spiritual life is by definition blissful. That's its actual nature. And that's how it feels once the mind is sufficiently purified. Because when the mind is sufficiently purified, we can feel the actual quality of what we're doing. But when the mind isn't sufficiently purified, we do it, but we don't feel the quality, we don't feel the blissful nature of it. Okay? Now, what does this mean for us? It means, again, to the point we made earlier, that therefore you want to try and do or engage in the mission in a way that keeps you inspired. Because what are you doing ultimately? What you're doing ultimately is purifying yourself to the point that you can experience the direct taste of spiritual life. Okay? And when does that kick in? It kicks in, it's there at every stage, right? You're in a kirtan, you like the kirtan, it's like, wow, that's a great kirtan. Or you're in a class, you feel inspired by the class, but it kicks in a substantial way from Ruchi onwards. Right? So in the material world, they either give into sense gratification, or they repress or suppress themselves, and it doesn't work, because that repression or suppression is like trying to hold down a volcano, right? And then just after a while, bang, eruption. But as spiritualists, we have other options. Okay, so actually, let me add one stage. The best case scenario in the material world is that people channel their energies. Okay, best case scenario, because that, you know, directing energy in a positive direction, that's goodness. But when we come to spiritual life, we gain an additional option. We're meant to use these top two options, right? So we're not repressing it, we're not suppressing it. We're meant to use the top two options. The goodness option is I channel my energies in a healthy way. And the transcendental option is I purify. Okay, I purify my desires. So as devotees, we work with options 3 and 4, channeling energy in a healthy way and purifying our energy, purifying our desires. Okay, now even this point about taking prasadam, if we take, and you can experiment with this. I'll be honest, I experiment with this and I found it worked incredibly well. I encourage you, the next time you take prasadam, do it as a meditation, right? No, really, don't take this as a kind of just an idea. Do this as a meditation. So sit down with the meal, do the prayer properly. We'll cover the prayers, right? Do the prayer properly, understand what you're praying. So no longer this mechanical thing, yes, Sarah Vijayal, I have no idea what I'm saying, Sarah Vijayal, just get it done, and then something else. I encourage you, do it properly. Have the translation there with you if you want. Or read the translation after you said the prayer. Do the prayer, do the meditation properly. Then take prasadam. Do it the way that Prabhupada often took prasadam. You read Prabhupada's memories by Prabhupada disciples. You read Lilamrita. You listen to memories of Prabhupada. You will see how many times devotees will tell you that Prabhupada, he would take prasadam as a meditation. So he sits down, oftentimes by himself. He's taking one piece of prasadam with his eyes closed. He's chewing it slowly. He's relishing the taste, the texture, but he has a meditation along with this. And what's his meditation? Prabhupada's meditation is that this food, this tastes so delicious because it's mixed with Krishna's saliva. Krishna's lips have touched the food. Do this as a meditation and see what happens to you. See what happens to you. That first verse, Vacho Vegam and Sakroda Vegam, in the purple, Prabhupada talks about the line between the tongue, the belly, the genitals. Do that regularly and see what happens to you. See what happens. You'll be amazed. The thing that's so amazing in what we have by Prabhupada is we've been given so much, but we don't do it. We don't do it. We don't understand the significance of what we've been given. And therefore we don't experience what's available for us to experience. But try it. Even if it's one meal a day as a meditation. And I guarantee you, if you do that regularly, you'll find that you become spiritually stronger, and even you'll find that you have more self-discipline, more spiritual self-control. There's a term, Hridaya Durbalyam, right? It's called weakness of heart. And there's another term in Shastra, Asat Trishna, which means material desires. So I wanted to understand what this particularly meant. So I asked one Prabhupada disciple, and he was explaining that Hridaya, that this weakness of heart, this means the desire to enjoy. You see? Weakness of heart, spiritual weakness is I can't give up the desire to enjoy. Spiritual strength means I've given up the desire to be the enjoyer, and I'm more and more attached to serving Krishna, to pleasing his senses. You see? So to the extent that we're attached to material enjoyment, to that extent we actually have this weakness of the heart. It's a symptom of a weakness of heart. And the more we have an excitement about spiritual activity, to that extent we're actually developing spiritual strength. I'm emphasizing that because I know devotees. I know devotees who, if you don't explain these terms, they take it in a material sense. So some devotees think that weakness of heart just means that you're a bit soft and meek as a person. No, no. Even the person who's pushy and controlling, to the extent that he wants to enjoy materially, to that extent, he has a weakness of heart. And what we're trying to do in spiritual life is accrue more spiritual strength. That's what we're looking for. Okay, there was one other point I was going to make on this. Let's just see. Yeah, so if we honor prasad as a meditation, and if you're cooking, if we have that meditation while we're cooking, even better. You know, it will transform your spiritual life, because all of these are sources of spiritual strength, spiritual empowerment as well, and they help us to control. And again, I understand it's difficult in the material world. It's difficult in the material world to try to be spiritual in a world where everything is encouraging us to be materialistic. But these verses give us some clues as to how we can move in the right direction. I also want to emphasize this: when the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad, he is satisfied. There's an axiomatic truth here. This statement is so important. Satisfied by seeing that other people are satisfied. There's a statement in the Shastra that for a pure devotee, the only way that they can be cognizant of happiness is by Krishna's being pleased. They're so intimately connected to Krishna that if he's pleased, they feel happy knowing that he's pleased, because they actually feel his pleasure. They actually sense his pleasure, and that's what's actually, and their pleasure is non-different from his own. And when Krishna is displeased, they feel his displeasure as their own displeasure. I first heard this brilliant class. It was a brilliant class by His Holiness Shiv Ramaraj. He was elaborating on a pastime from Chaitanya Charitamrita, and in this pastime, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's chastising some devotees. So externally, he's unhappy. But the devotees who are being chastised, they're feeling very blissful. And they're thinking, this means actually, even though he's chastising us externally, he's pleased. And we know he's pleased because we can feel it. And our job is to become so intimately connected to Krishna that we can also have that same experience. I remember when I heard this. This was mentioned by Radhanath Maharaj. I was at the Festival of Inspiration in New Vrindavan many years ago. I think this is a year they'd invited us to give a seminar. I can't remember if it was 2008 or something like that. And at the time, I remember what I'd been reading, because I was trying to understand what happens in terms of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, what happens in spontaneous devotional service, how does this all work? You know, and I'd been reading and hearing classes which talked about how at the higher stages of spiritual life, the devotee may also have their own personal, leaning or personal taste for a service to Krishna, etc., etc. And I wanted to understand more about this and how does this whole process take place. And I came from morning class and at the Festival of Inspiration, New Vrindavan, and Radhanath Maharaj was giving class. And as many of you have experienced, sometimes you have something that's on your mind and you come to the class and something will be said in the class and you think, wow, I get that connected with something that I was thinking about. And he only gave one sentence, but it was like a sutra. And he looked at me and he said, we were just in the class with everyone else. And he said to me, he said in the class, in the early stages of spiritual life, we see through the eyes of Shastra. And he said, in the latter stages of spiritual life, we see through the heart. And I thought that's just such a brilliant statement, because what that was helping me to understand is that for advanced devotees, while still being within Guru Sadhu Shastra. They don't go out of Guru Sadhu Shastra. But while still within the confines of Guru Sadhu Shastra, their own higher stages of devotion also lend a certain flavor and a certain perspective to how things are being explained in Krishna consciousness. And this point also came up again. There was a class I went to, Soho Street, ISKCON London Temple. And this point was being elaborated on, that in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, it is written by Vrindavan Das Thakur. Now he, in the spiritual world, he's a cowherd boy. That's his eternal position. Because that's his eternal position, when he's recounting the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, he's recounting them, but especially certain pastimes are being seen from a certain angle because of his own eternal position. Whereas Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he's a Manjari. So when he's recounting the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's being recounted, but from a different angle, a different perspective, a different flavor. There's a more intimate aspect to that recounting. So it's deep, you know, the whole process is extremely deep and extremely personal. Anyway, this point, we're meant to practice this. We're meant to practice the culture of putting someone else in the center aside from ourselves. Okay? Look, the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad, then he is satisfied. We're meant to start to transfer our sensual satisfaction to the satisfaction of seeing that others are happy and satisfied in spiritual life. It's an orientation, it's a way of living, it's a way of practice. And it happens every time we live in that way where, what can I do to please Krishna? There's a difference, I remember hearing this, there's a difference between doing what I want and then saying, Krishna, here, you can have some too. As opposed to thinking, what would please my spiritual master? Which is also what would please Krishna, and then trying to do it. And we can't fake where we are. We may find that we struggle to do that all the time, but bit by bit, think about what your life would be like if the joy of the other devotees was your own joy. Think about it. For many of us, we struggle with envy or jealousy. Someone's done something or someone seems to be doing really well. But think about what our life would be like if the satisfaction of other people was our own. If we felt their success as if it were our own success, you'd break through. You'd have tremendous breakthroughs in spiritual life. It is one of the ultimate antidotes to envy, to take joy in the success of others. Anyway, that's a whole seminar. Maybe we'll do something on that at some other point about how we can overcome envy. Anyway, we're gonna read on. So actually, we've covered that particular verse. Next verse: the spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. Very interesting. So here, always eager to hear and chant. So this is very interesting. Your speech, what we speak, is actually directly associated to what we've heard. Okay? So if you want to know what people are hearing, just listen carefully to what they talk about. You see? This is the ears are the input, the mouth is the output. You see? The ears are the input, the mouth is the output. But there's also a middle factor, which I'll come to in a moment. So if you want to give up speaking about lower things, the solution is to hear about higher things. Because if you keep hearing about higher subjects, Krishna consciousness, you'll find that if you keep hearing about it properly, receptively, you'll find it will start to change your speech. You see? That's actually how the system works. What you're speaking about has come from what you've been listening to. That's why. So when you see people who are talking about gossip and nonsense, it's because they're hearing that nonsense. They're hearing that nonsense all the time. Mundane stuff. If you see people who are always speaking about mundane stuff, it's because they're hearing mundane stuff all the time. Therefore, what happens in the mind, that's what's accessible for them. Now, the middle stage is the intelligence. So when you hear something and then you meditate on it, you think about it, you reflect about it, what it does is it expands what you've heard. It expands what you've heard and it deepens. It actually roots. So engaging in reflection, engaging in analysis is like let's say you have a balloon and the balloon is tied to, there's some rope tied to the end of the balloon. And then the end of the rope, you tie an anvil. So you put the anvil down and now the rope will just stand because there's a rope, there's a balloon, there's a rope and it's tied to an anvil at the end. So when you reflect and analyze on the teachings, you anchor that knowledge within the consciousness. You know? So the easiest way to give up speaking, sometimes it's called Gramya Kata, gossip, stuff that's not going to help us to move forward. The easiest way is through the ears, you know? And then the subtle point here is that, yes, there may be some classes you find more inspiring than others. Listen to those that you find inspiring, right? Krishna consciousness is an ocean of transcendental mercy, nectar, teachings, opportunities, service. Find those things that inspire you and keep hearing from those sources. Because then you'll find, and you'll know it's working. How do you know it's working? You know it's working when that's what you speak. Right? You'll know that you're hearing sufficiently when you speak sufficiently on spiritual topics. If you find that most of your speech is material, it means you're not hearing enough. It means two things. I'm not hearing enough in terms of in terms of quantity, and or I'm not hearing enough in terms of quality. Okay, so this is how it works. What comes in here will come out here. Okay, let's move on. So yeah, their names, their qualities, names, and forms. So everything comes ultimately from the name. Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila. The idea is that from the name, we start to experience the form, the qualities, the pastimes. There's different types of names as well. One type of name, Rupa Yuktanam. So when one chants at that particular stage, then one very easily sees the form of the Lord. There's what's called Guna Yuktanam. There's Lila Yuktanam. There's different qualities of names of Krishna. That doesn't mean it's the same. It can be the same Maha Mantra, but it's the quality of the realization and the quality of the purity of that name as it's being chanted by a particular individual. And at the different stages, there's also a different remembrance as well, different smarana. So as people progress in spiritual life, there's a different meditation. At one stage, it's Nam Smaranam. That's at Nishta. There's Rupa Guna Smaranam. That's at, I believe, that's Ruchi, Asakti. At the high stage, there's Lila Smaranam, which is Prema. So at different stages, there's a different meditation that automatically takes place within the consciousness. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to the next verse. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis, who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. So the spiritual master is explained in different ways in Shastra. So in one place, or in some places, he's explained to be a representative of Balaram, right? So we know that, representative of Balaram. Sometimes he's explained to be representative of Krishna. There's one place Prabhupada says the supreme personality of servitor Godhead, right? So he's representing Krishna. But in other places, it's explained that the guru is a representative of Srimati Radharani. Okay? So from different angles, Shastra explains the same thing in different ways. Okay, now, here, let's go into this. He's expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements. The whole Sankirtan movement is what? The whole Sankirtan movement is bringing the living entities, bringing everything back into its original form. What's the original form? The original form is the glorification of Radha and Krishna. Everything in existence exists for the glorification of Radha and Krishna. Every element of creation in the material world, every element of creation in the spiritual world, and everybody, every person is meant for the glorification. There's a wider point here. And this is as follows. The more that we move away from what we're meant to be doing, the more that we move away from what we're meant to be, how we're meant to be acting, the more we move things away from their original purpose, the more life becomes troublesome. So the more unnatural we are, the more difficult our life becomes and the more unsatisfying. You see, that's actually how Dharma works. Dharma means the nature of something. So if the nature of the living entity, if our nature is to serve the Lord, and if the nature of everything in the world is meant to be used in glorification of the Lord, the more that we use it outside of that, the harder life becomes and the less fulfilling. So we literally open ourselves up to difficulties. You see, that's actually what happens. The more we move away from what's natural, the more life becomes both difficult and unfulfilling. It's really important to understand those two dimensions, these two axes, difficulty and unfulfillment. Why? Because sometimes you may find that people are engaged in sense gratification and they're enjoying. It's not that they're having the difficulty, but they will never get this deep spiritual relish. And then, of course, we also know that the thing that they're enjoying today can be the thing that causes them to suffer tomorrow, or in their next life, they'll be bereft of it. So there are some people, in one life, they were extremely wealthy. And what did they do with their money? They just enjoyed. They used it for all kinds of sinful activity. So in the next life, are they born with money? Yes or no? No. They're born into poverty. Because Krishna saw in your previous life, you had money, you misused it. In your previous life, you had money, you squandered it. So therefore, to help you, because what you've just done is you've shown that if you're given money, you will not use it properly. It will distract you from coming back to Godhead. Therefore, in the next life, we won't give you any money. Yeah, or we'll give you very little money. Because what you have now, unfortunately, is a samskar in your mind, an impression in your mind, a leaning in your mind towards using money for more and more sensual activity, which takes you away from Krishna. So we draw different experiences to us in our lives. The amazing thing, and I want to be positive about this, the amazing thing is you can show Krishna, I can handle whatever you give me. How do you show it? It means that what you're given, you have to use it in his service. Very simple. Very simple. One point that came up a while ago on this was that the means must include some of the end. So sometimes even we may think, well, I'm going to get this resource or this situation or this platform. And when I get it, I'm going to use it in Krishna's service. If you don't start using it in Krishna's service, even to some degree when you first get it, then you'll become so attached that later on when we're meant to use it all in his service, we won't. Because we'll think, now I'm too attached, it's mine. You see? The living entity becomes attached to anything or anyone that he regularly associates with. It's that simple. That's why all the love songs, oh, yeah, we just started, you can't tell who you fall in love with. We just started speaking and suddenly blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's normal. That's the nature of the material world. That's the nature of the living entity. Whatever we regularly associate with, that's what we become attached to. And it's not a bad thing either. Maya sakta manapata, yogam yunja madashraya. Asakta mana, Krishna says, become attached to me. With your mind attached to me, asakta mana. So if we keep hearing and keep serving sincerely, we'll actually develop our attachment to Krishna. It really is that simple. It will work, but we have to do it. And I want you to visualize this like a building. So the builders are there, they're creating a new building for you, okay? But at the same time, the building isn't ready yet. So what are they doing? While they're building this, you've got all the scaffolding. The building at this present moment in time, it can't stand on its own, okay? So they've got to have all the scaffolding around to keep everything in place. But at some point, you can remove all the scaffolding and the construction will stand on its own qualification. So we're like that. In spiritual life, we may not have full taste yet. The hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. So we're also going to engage in so many other activities for Krishna, which actually have a more relatable dimension to them. Which, wow, we've got more people to sign up for our next presentation at university, whatever it is, right? It's still Sankirtan, but we're gonna have the scaffolding. But remember, you're trying to get to the point where you have taste for the hearing, chanting, all of the Nava Anga Bhakti, remembering, right? Don't mistake the scaffolding for the building, right? The two things are intimately connected, but do not mistake the scaffolding for the building. How much do I have a taste for hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna, remembering Krishna? We're trying to come to that particular platform, okay? And that's the whole process of Krishna consciousness. Maybe one other point is that therefore also, this is very interesting, Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. So again, the Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give Ujjwala Ras, the highest opportunity for the topmost relationship with the Lord, okay? The sweetest, most intimate understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's what we can hold on to, and that's what we can aspire for as we go through all the stages of spiritual life. Okay, we'll go to the next verse. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. Why confidential? Because there's nothing more pleasing than reuniting the family. That's the point. There's nothing more pleasing than the people who've rejected your father, getting them back to the point where they actually come back home and say, Dad, I'm sorry I left. I miss you. And the father's just like, wow, you returned my son or my daughter. You returned them back to me. It's extremely confidential service. Mm-hmm. But this other line is also important. This is acknowledging all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. So this is the other point, that when we practice spiritual life, it should be based upon something. Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. That's how we know we're not speculating, because it's based upon a higher level or insight or understanding. An interesting question comes up in a literature by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhakti Tattva Viveka. The question that comes up is, which is higher? The statements of a self-realized Acharya or the scriptures? Bhaktivinoda Thakur in that literature says of the two, the self-realized Acharya, his statements are actually considered to be foremost. Why? Because scripture is vast. The self-realized Acharya, he understands the purpose of scripture, and therefore he knows of this vast scriptural knowledge, What are the elements to be emphasized in this situation for this group of people? And that's why we have to revere not just the words, not just the letter of the law coming from Prabhupada, but also the spirit of the law, right? The mood. So what Prabhupada said, part 1. Part 2, his mood, okay? And then part 3, his application. How do we do this? So first of all, the word of the law, obvious, right? So we should learn the teachings, letter of the law. Second, spirit of the law. Now that's not too hard either. Why? What's Prabhupada's mood? His mood is compassionate. He wants to help everyone to come closer to Krishna, right? So the letter of the law, clear. Spirit of the law, clear. It should be relatively clear. How do I explain things in such a way that helps people to progress while being chaste, right? Because if you give them the wrong teaching, instead of progressing, everyone regresses, okay? Because if you give them the wrong medicine, no one gets cured, everyone remains ill, and even worse, they're becoming more sick while they think that they're becoming healthy. So we don't want to change the teaching. Letter of the law, spirit of the law. Now the third one is where it gets a bit more tricky. Third is application of the law. Okay? How does that work? Okay, that requires you have to be grounded in part 1 and part 2. If you don't know the teachings, no question of perfect application. If you know the teachings but you're hard-hearted, that means, see, this second point, the spirit of the law, this requires a certain level of purification. You see? If I don't have a certain level of purification, I will weaponize the teachings. I'll look in the literature and I'll find anything that I can that allows me to dominate other people. So I've got the letter of the law, but I don't have the spirit of the law. So you have to first be grounded in the letter of the law, right? That's what's the actual teaching. Second, the spirit of the law. This is prayojana actually. What's the purpose of the teaching, right? I apply the teaching in such a way that people become more Krishna conscious. I apply the teaching in such a way that we make Krishna consciousness more accessible to other people, while keeping it within the boundaries of the teachings themselves, which is again the first point, the letter of the law. The letter of the law creates the boundaries. The spirit of the law creates the motivation. Now, when you have these two things in place, I know what I'm talking about, and I've got the right intention, then you can apply it properly. Yeah. Then it comes to application. Then it's, okay, Prabhupada said this in 1977, and we're now in 2020. How do we take what Prabhupada said, considering what he said and considering why he said it, how do we apply it here? Very simple example, right? So, you know, there's nothing wrong with devotees preaching to the yoga crowd. We're there, we're calling it kirtan yoga, fine, no issue, right? Does it fit the letter of the law? Spreading Krishna consciousness and giving people the holy name, tick, yes. Does it fit the spirit of the law, right? Finding compassionate ways to make it accessible to more people, yes. Taking it to the yoga crowd, tick, yes it does. Does it do it in such a way that does not compromise the teachings? Are we still giving them the holy name? Yes. Are we still giving them whatever philosophy, but that doesn't go against the conclusions of Shastra? Yes. Okay. All three criteria have been met. Letter of the law, spirit of the law, application of the law. This is actually how we're meant to do it, but it requires some qualification on us to do this more expertly as well. Okay, so this is why the guru is considered to be this confidential servitor, because he's actually bringing people back to the Lord. And he's doing it based upon revealed scriptures, which are followed by all authorities. Interestingly enough, you become an authority by following. This is a universal law. The best teacher is the best student. Because unless you're studying, you have nothing to share, right? The best leader is the best follower. If you can follow, you can lead. I was discussing with one devotee this morning, and they gave a very nice example. So in Krishna book, there's a pastime of Ramaharshan Sutta. And he's giving a class on a Vyasa-san. And there are sages and they're sitting and they're listening, they're hearing the class. And then Balaram appears in the assembly. But Ramaharshan Sutta does not offer proper respects to Balaram. So Balaram kills him. Now let's just deconstruct this. What's actually happening? Ramaharshan Sutta is on an elevated platform giving class to other people. So he's doing his service, and for his service, he takes that position for service. That position isn't actually his. He's taken that position because he's now representing Vyasadeva in giving the class. That's why you're on the Vyasa-san. It's not that you're Vyasadeva. It's that we're representing Vyasadeva, therefore we take this position while we're representing him. And then Balaram comes. Guru, right? Guru Tattva comes. And Ramaharshan Sutta is now meant to understand that I'm taking the role of leader before these people, but now someone who's senior to me is coming into the environment, so therefore I should immediately take the role of subordinate. You see? When I'm with people who are junior to me, I take the role of leader. When someone comes who's senior to me, then I'm leading those who are junior, but I'm subordinate to those who are senior. You see? You're both. I will take the role of a senior to do this service, but my internal mood is I'm junior because why? Because I'm always a disciple of my own guru. And when the seniors come before me, even if I have to keep doing this service, sometimes you'll see this at the manor or any temple. You're giving a class, a senior devotee comes. Okay, you can't necessarily just get off the Vyasa-san. But the mood, the internal mood is someone whose seniors come. They're more qualified to give the class than I am. So at least in my mind, and usually externally, I'll acknowledge there's a senior person. And if possible, the etiquette is, Marge, would you like to say something? Or Prabhu, Mataji, you're senior to me, would you like to say something? The mood isn't, oh, now the people who've been around longer than me have come to the class, now I can show them how advanced that I am. It's completely the wrong culture, completely the wrong etiquette. You know? It's so amazing. I saw this many years. I would sometimes give class at the manor, and then senior people like Shruti Dharma would come to the class. And you could understand that they were senior. Why? You could understand that they were senior because they were humble. You see? Someone who's not humble, they think, why should I go to this class? He's not been around as long as I have. Why should I listen to him? But people who are actually advanced, they have such a desire for Krishna, they will come and listen to anyone. Or they can. I mean, obviously they may have other services, but if they are in a position to listen and they want to, they'll listen. Even if it's just to give encouragement to the junior person who's hearing. So when they're advanced, they can hear from everyone. And the person who's like, I don't need to listen to anyone, that's the person who's actually lacking in advancement. It's the opposite it's the opposite to the way that we think of things. You see, that's what goes on. The more advanced a person is, the more humble they are also. But it's not superficial humility. They can also be like a lion. There's a WhatsApp group that I'm part of, and I've been toying with this idea because something was put out and I thought, that's true. It is true. But I thought that there's different angles to this particular subject. Anyway, what was put out? The point that was put out is that, someone who's pure will correct someone or address something, but they do it from a place of love and compassion, not from anger or fear. And I thought that's definitely true. But I also thought, there's another side to this. First of all, it's very difficult to know why someone is doing something, right? Sometimes I see that sometimes devotees, because they don't want to be told off, it becomes, devotees shouldn't do anything out of it's like, well, you're just upset because you got told off because you did something wrong. You know what I'm saying? It is like that sometimes. My spiritual master said he talked about, there was an example that happened in America. He mentioned this in the class. There was one devotee, and there was a female Mataji, and she'd become enraged, and she'd kind of, I think the temples were being warned that if she comes in the temple, be careful, because she's tried to, you know, throw something at the temple walls or throw something at parts of the temple. And it was so interesting, the response that my spiritual master had. He said, yes, but what's happened to this person that's caused them to feel this way? Right? So yes, we understand something's going on, but I want to know also what other conditions that have happened that have caused this type of response in this person. And so sometimes what happens is we don't like being corrected. But what we should also do is look at ourselves and think to ourselves, but hands up, let's be really honest. Did I do something wrong that actually was the reason why I was picked up or corrected in this particular way? You know? There's a fine line between being compassionate and being sentimental. I'm studying one book on leadership, and it's talking about this particular point. Anyway, so it's really about balance. And therefore it has to be in line with the revealed scriptures and the example given by authorities. This is so important. In Kali Yuga, we generally have to do the following. We have to read about these great examples. We have to hear about these great examples, but we often also have to see these examples, so we can see how does an advanced devotee function in this kind of situation. And we have to also reflect upon those examples, to inquire and say, so Guru Maharaj, I just want to understand, why did you respond that way? What was the situation? What were you trying to achieve? So we get a really clear understanding about what to do, why to do it that way, and how it applies to a specific context. I was in communication with a good friend of mine who used to live in the UK. He's a wonderful devotee. He's a really sincere devotee. He now lives in America. He used to live in London. And we were in communication yesterday. It was a really good conversation. And we were just talking about how in our early years in spiritual life, we were so naive, so naive. I mean, you just take everything at face value. And we were just talking about how now, as we grow up, as we, been around a little bit longer, you have to see people as they are and still love them, but you can't be in denial, you can't be in denial. That sense of having a sentiment is actually symptomatic of the mode of ignorance. And it leads to destructive outcomes. You see, it's so interesting. This is why the teachings are so incredible. It's always relevant. If you look at the modern world, what do you see? On one extreme, you have people who are just want to allow anything and everything. So if we're too liberal, it becomes problematic. Because if it's too liberal, there's no standards, there's no boundaries, and therefore there's no purity, and things go down. But if you go in the other extreme, if we're too rigid, too conservative, then it's so strict that there's no room for people to express themselves, no room for people to maneuver, no room for people to function, and therefore what they do is they eventually reject everything. Prabhupada writes in one place, I believe the term he uses is the staunch liberal devotee. It's a brilliant term. Prabhupada's books, the words he uses, they're exquisite. The staunch liberal devotee. And we were in Spain. I think it was a Pandavsena trip in Spain. I think it was then. And one devotee asked me about this. He said, what does Prabhupada mean? And I said to him, Prabhupada means 100% strict with ourselves, 90% tolerant with everyone else. That's what he means, right? So first of all, I want to be following properly, right? So that I can be an example, I can be connected, I can offer that to the world, offer that to our communities, offer that to the people that we're reaching out to. So we should follow as much as we can. And at the same time, with other people, dependent on the circumstance, we should try to be accommodating depending on the circumstance, okay? Accommodating doesn't mean that we accommodate everything. We accommodate to the extent that's favorable and progressive for everyone to move forward. You see, that's what it means to accommodate. It's not everything and it's not nothing. It's I'm accommodating to the extent that's healthy according to this situation to help everyone to move forward in their Krishna consciousness. Anyway, there's some thoughts on that. We're almost moving forward. Let's look at this last verse and then we can open up for questions. Okay, so this last verse. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. This is so important. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. There it is in black and white. Therefore, we start the morning offering respects and glorification to the Guru. Because it's by Guru that we get Krishna. It's actually an exchange. There are many aspects of spiritual life like this. I sometimes see devotees. There was a kirtan event, and there was a devotee who's very well known in terms of doing kirtan, and they made I wasn't there, I heard about this. They made a statement that, I'm not really into philosophy, I just do kirtan, like that. And I was thinking, okay, interesting. But if we do kirtan properly, you'll develop a taste for understanding Krishna. You'll develop a taste for reading and hearing about Krishna. The holy name will bring you to understand Krishna. It will invoke a desire within you if you chant properly. So even the person who says, I'm not philosophical, I just like to chant, I just like to do kirtan. If they do kirtan properly, a taste will arise in them to want to know Krishna, to want to read and hear about him, right? Other side, if someone's like, I just like reading, I like reading Prabhupada's books. If they read Prabhupada's books properly, Prabhupada made the statement explicitly, he said, I've written all these books just to convince you to chant Hare Krishna. So someone who reads the books sincerely, they will develop a taste for chanting the holy names of the Lord. Yeah? One will invoke the other, right? So it's not just one thing. So I just do this. I'm not into this other stuff. If you do one, if you do it properly though, over time, it will invoke a desire for the other. It will invoke it within your heart and or through the association that you keep, right? But it's like an Olympic race. So sometimes you have these races where someone will do the running for one leg of the race, then they'll hand the baton over to someone else who'll run for the next leg of the race, then they'll hand the baton over. So the Shastra and the teachings work in that way. The holy name will invoke a desire for reading. The reading will invoke a desire for chanting. It will all come together. And in the same way, the mercy of Krishna will give you Guru, and the mercy of Guru will give someone Krishna. That's how it works. Because they work together. You see? By Krishna, one gets Guru. And by Guru, one gets Krishna. Okay. So maybe we'll stop there. We've spoken for quite some time. And let's just pause there and see if anyone has any comments or questions on anything we've discussed so far. Let's just see if there's anything that, okay, a couple of questions. Let's just take it from, I'm just scrolling backwards. Okay, so from Kishan, you mentioned the point about thinking, what can we sacrifice to give to Krishna? What do we need to do what do we need to let go of to read more, hear more, etc.? For us, when we don't have such taste for hearing and chanting, but do have taste for habits in the lower modes, it can almost be difficult to make that step for a fear of losing enjoyment. We know what we should be doing, but we don't necessarily get the full taste yet. How do we overcome this mindset and make the leap? That is one of the key purposes of the Sankirtan mission. Because the mission is so broad that there's so many things you can dovetail on Krishna. Let's say you love to draw. Okay, draw for Krishna. The taste will be mixed. You'll be getting taste from the activity, but you'll also be getting some taste and some purification from the fact of who you're doing it for. So you can do that. Let's say that you like to organize. Organizing things it's not a limb of devotional service, but you like to organize. Okay, organize for Krishna. You've got a taste for organizing, but you'll get a purification, a purified taste, even if it's incremental at the beginning, for the person that you're organizing for. So this is why in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives those different stages. Lower stage, whatever you do, offer it to me. Higher than that, you should offer me these specific things. Higher than that, surrender everything. Wherever you can plug yourself into that journey, start there and things will move forward in a positive way. Yeah, okay. I'll go to your next question. You mentioned that it's refreshing when someone says, this is where I'm at. What's the balance between accepting and being genuine to ourselves and others versus also trying to change? Both things happen together. It's not one or the other. So you accept, this is where I am, but it's just like this. It's just like, so someone is doing some, work on a trampoline. Okay, so are they on the trampoline? Yes. Are they going to stay on the trampoline? No, they're going to use it to jump higher. So accepting where I am does not stop you from moving to a higher station. It's the same thing we do when we're walking up the stairs. You put your foot firmly on one step and you use that to push you to get to the next step. So there's two dangers. One danger is I just accept where I am and I don't move forward. The other danger is that I actually don't accept where I am and because of that I don't move forward. Right? So mode of ignorance, I don't move forward at all, right? I don't accept where I am, I deny where I am, and I'm inactive. Okay, second, but still bad, I don't accept where I am, so there's still some ignorance. I'm not moving backwards, but I'm not moving forwards. Some mixed modes, we'd say, right? Some passion, some ignorance. Goodness is, I accept where I am, I know what the next step is, and I do whatever I can to move from where I am to the next step. So there's two things. There's awareness, there's knowledge, there's activity. So it's sattva. I know where I am, I acknowledge it. I know where I need to go, knowledge, I acknowledge that. And I'm making the effort to go from where I am to where I need to be. So that effort, that's also sattvic. So knowledge, so activity done in knowledge and with awareness. That's the mode of goodness approach. Okay, let's move on. Vrinda Sundari, thank you for joining the call. Your question, as a neophyte devotee, how do we balance serving others and making sure we look after ourselves materially and spiritually? A lot of people get, this is and thank you so, Vrinda Sundari, we could do a whole seminar on this because we've been there. We've been in that space. So thank you for asking. Let's make it very personal. One thing that happened with me for I think it was 3 years running, maybe my wife will confirm. For 3 years running, we used to come to different programs and Satyananda Maharaj would be there and he'd say to me, Bhuta Bhavana, it was a darshan we had also in Buckland Hall. I recorded the darshan and he said, Bhuta Bhavana, he said, some advice, he said, don't always overdo it. That's what he told me. So what we can do, I'll give a few things. So one, through good association, especially advanced association, they can kind of pick out where you are. That really helps. I mean, to be honest, it's invaluable. Some of the challenges that come in spiritual life, you can have challenges in spiritual life and you don't even know what's going on. Really, I'm telling honestly, hand on my heart. And you don't even know what's going on. And it requires someone who's more advanced to actually do the analysis and say to you, what's actually happening to you is this. And therefore you should do this, this, and this. Sometimes it can happen like that. So one way of balance is good association. Second is introspection. And the introspection is of a particular type. When you introspect yourself about your life, you should ask yourself the question, what mode is my life in? What mode is my life in? If it's goodness, you'll see that there's balance. If it's out of balance, then it may indicate there's some passion there's some ignorance. Okay, like that. And then if we recognize that, then we see what we can do to get it more into balance. And the other thing I'll say about this is that balance is dynamic. So it's just like, so you have to balance the cooking with your physical health, etc. So it's not like, okay, I've got a formula, that's the end of the story, because life happens. People didn't expect to be, I don't know how many months, 8, 9 months, self-isolating. Life happens. So it's a dynamic balance. So it means that now that this has come in and I've got to juggle this additional thing, how do I move something else so I can still keep these necessary elements in the correct proportion? One thing that I've been doing over the last few months that I find is really helping. I have a formula. Self-care, so that's time for sadhana, reading and so on. So I start the day, and it's the same thing that you've heard from Prabhupada. I start the day with self-care, knowing that if I don't look after myself, I'm not going to have much to give to other people. So the first part of the day, self-care. The next part of the day, service, right? So give a simple example, work. So what's your work? Okay, I'm working to earn money to keep the ashram of my deities stable, right? So I can offer boga to the deities. I can pay the bills for the house for the deities, right? So first, self-care. Second, service. Okay, so your time for work, your time you're doing your projects, whatever. And then evening, sangha. Right? So there's time for everything. There's time for my self-care. There's time for my service. There's time for my association. Right? And I tend to find that sequence also works really well. Yeah. And there may be situations which force you, and this is interesting as well, there may be situations which force you to give more attention to one than the other. So if for example, I had a period where, period where, because I'd kind of overdid it with my health, then what happened is Krishna forced me to give a lot more attention to my health, right? Because I'd neglected it. It was like, okay, because you've neglected it, Bhuta Bhavana, you went into a lower mode in regards to your health. So now to balance it, you're going to really have to look at it, right? It's still mercy ultimately, but it's mercy to get us to balance. So that's one thing. So self-care, service, sangha. If you keep that formula and keep conscious of what's going on, then that can help. There's one other thing that Bhakti Gami and I have been doing, which we found to be really useful. We were having a really interesting discussion this morning. And and I made some notes on it actually. We had an interesting discussion this morning about what is our position of strength, right? So basically what you do, and I'm still working on this, is you think about your own life. What are the elements that bring me at my best? So for example, I can see also Jagannath Sharan is on the call. I see Jagannath Sharan, I mean, he's got great taste for kirtan, right? So having regular quality time to do kirtan, I just see just like, wow, just like completely, ready to take on the world. So it's a position of strength. So I definitely need that in my life, right? For someone else, it may be, I'm at the best way when I get plenty of time to read and study. My wife's like that. She loves to study the scriptures and it really helps her. For someone else, it may be that they actually do better when things are fast paced, right? I get bored easily. I need to feel that we've got about 10 different projects on, right? It may not work for one person, but that may really work for another. It may keep them enthusiastic. They may find that when there's not many projects on, I feel bored, I feel restless. So the question we can ask ourselves is, when am I at my best in spiritual life? What's the way of arranging my situation where I feel really like, yes, Yeah. So position of strength, understanding that and knowing that it's dynamic. It's dynamic. So things will happen that we'll have to rebalance, but keeping that dynamic balance in our life is really, really powerful. And to that point also, it's also about what can I eliminate? What can I automate as well? So there's some things that we may just be able to eliminate. We don't need to do that anymore, right? Like, you know, it could be even be that you have a system for the bills. You know what, rather than reading and having to think about these different things as they come through, or checking the different bills or whatever, I just set a time in the diary every Friday, 6 to 7. That's when I just look at all the letters, right? And then I can just go through them one by one and execute whatever needs to be executed. So it's not on my mind. I get them done. I've got a time in the diary, right? Was it a time for everything? You know, so you can also look and see, where can I be more efficient and effective so that life becomes easy? This is what this is the biggest realization I had a while ago. Prabhupada talked about simple living and higher thinking, but what we've often done is we've bought into a very complex life, you see. And what happens is like this, right? Look, so simple living. So let's say this is living. Let's say this hand is living. This hand is thinking. The more complex the living becomes, the less capacity you have for deep thinking. Your capacity for thinking goes down because a lot of your thinking is going into trying to juggle all the complex stuff in life. So when your life becomes more simple, you actually have more mental capacity for higher thinking, you see? So the more the life is complex, the lower the thinking becomes. You can't have both. It's actually a trade-off between the two things. We can't have both. It's a trade-off. So sometimes it's about seeing, what can I automate? What can I simplify in my life? Right? What are some of the things that, you know what, I can get someone else to do that for us? You know, I have to be honest, I'm saddened by how hard it is for many devotees, especially with families, to do what they need to do. You know, one day devotees should start a business. There are many senior ladies in our communities who've gone through life, they've had children, they're elders, they've got good motherly energy, and they could also be there to give time off to the parents and look after those children, you know, so that the parents can get time off, they can get time off, they can get energy. The way that we live in modern society is really artificial. If you look according to scripture, in traditional Vedic culture, the women did not, and even the men, did not have to just struggle alone to bring up children. It wasn't the done thing, because everyone knew it took a village to raise a child. It was like, duh, obviously, you know, the parents weren't kind of sleep deprived. That's not how it was done. And hopefully in the future, as we get more real community, not large numbers of people who are suffering, you know, but happen to live near each other, but real community. The more we have real community, the more it's like, you know, don't worry, just rest. We'll look after your kids, you know, and it will happen. It will happen. But this is how it should be. And there's a huge demand for that. Huge demand for that. So yeah, until those times, we have to kind of do the best we can with what we have. But this is also why I encourage devotees, look after your physical health, look after your mental health, because if you do that, you have more capacity. Before I kind of damaged my health, I mean, it's much better now, so it's nothing to feel sorry for, and it's my own responsibility, no one else's. But before that, I mean, before I became a devotee, I'll tell you honestly, because I used to be into all kinds of different meditation and different practices, and now that I look at it, I realize the stuff I did before I became a devotee, it gave me so much capacity. So when I was a devotee, we had loads of capacity. I once had someone, they did some kind of reading for me, and they told me, they said that you overdo it. They said that you have a tendency of over caring to the point of losing your own balance. They said, but the thing about you is you have the capacity to get away with it. And it's so interesting. There's a whole science that I've been researching. I thought, what am I doing that allowed me to get away with it? And I kind of discovered some things around that. But the point is, take care of yourself. This is why self-care, then service, then sangha. And interestingly enough, what does Prabhupada say? Health, sadhana, service. Same order. Health, sadhana, service. Because if you take, not overdoing it, but not underdoing it. If you give proper attention to your health and your sadhana, and it gives you more capacity for your service. That's how it really works. you know? So yeah, self-care, service, Sangha. That's how it really works. Okay. Hope that answers your question. Okay, yeah, and the other thing, I think this is really important. I was going to make a quote about this. This is really important about taking care of our needs. There's a difference between our needs and our desires. A lot of people who are more materialistic, they just desire stuff. It's not what they need. But if you take care of your needs properly, then you can really help other people, and it allows you to do consistent devotional service. Now the question then comes up, how do you know when it's the right level? So I had this realization the other day. You'll know that where you're giving the proper attention to yourself, and it's not too much or too little. The way you know, it's very interesting. The way you know that it's the right level is you want to take care of yourself enough that you forget about yourself. You see, if someone is too self-obsessed, it means they're giving too much attention, right? If they're too self-obsessed in the negative, everything's going wrong for me, I'm falling apart, my life is falling apart, it means that they're also self-absorbed because they're not looking after themselves properly. Properly is different from the amount. You may be giving enough time and enough energy, but you're not doing the right things. Not you, I'm just talking generally. Okay, so it's not just time, it's not just energy, it's doing the right things. Are you doing what you need to do for yourself properly so you can continue to move forward in your life? And you'll know that you are. We've all seen this. There's times in our life where we've given ourselves proper attention, that you're giving enough time for your health. And it can be something small. It could be many of the gurus, they do yoga. Shiv Ramraj does yoga in the morning. Prahlad Maharaj does yoga in the morning. My spiritual master, he used to speak about how every year he would go to Mayapur for the GBC meetings. And every year that he went to Mayapur for the ISKCON GBC meetings, which happened around Gaurapanim, he would say that every year there were gurus, GBCs, who would send a message saying, this year, I'm sorry, I can't attend the meetings. And he said, usually, if they couldn't attend, it was because of illness. And he said, in most cases, those illnesses were stress-related illnesses. You see? And one of the things he said that the devotees should do, he said, therefore, one of the things that's very healthy for the devotees is when you go to the morning program, or even at home, dance enthusiastically in the kirtan, because it's a simple but devotional way of engaging the body physically in service. The lifestyle we have in the modern world, you see that most people, especially now we're working at home, they're sitting in front of their computer all the time. The body's not meant for that. It's adharmic. Just like you can have adharma or going against dharma generally, you can go against the dharma of the body. The body is meant to be moved. There's a video that was done, and it was looking at people who, I think it was Sardinia or another country, where the elderly lived to an advanced age. So they did scientific research to find out, why is it that the people from this country, they live to an advanced age and they're physically in good shape? What are they doing that we're not doing? And the research found that in that particular country, when they would go to visit friends, they wouldn't take the car, they would walk there. So they would be active physically throughout the day. And because the body is a machine, it's a yantra, because they kept the body in motion, which is what it's designed for, it kept strong and it kept in good condition. So this point about needs is essential. How much is enough is you do it to the extent that you become free of the concern with ourselves, right? When I take care of myself to the right level, I find that, yeah, I'm not obsessed. I'm not like, oh, I'm ill. Oh, I've got this ache. I've got this pain. No, I'm taking care of myself enough that I'm not thinking about myself anymore. That's how you know it's the right amount. You take care of yourself enough to release yourself from the prison of self-concern. You see, it's so interesting. When self-care is proper, it automatically propels you towards service. I've taken care of myself, I'm enlivened, I'm enlivened to do. I'm enlivened to go and focus on giving something to other people. And it's not one-off, it's a regular practice. Okay, I'm going to move on. So, Nitai Mata. Okay, you mentioned saying Srimati Radharani of representative guru. Can you speak? Yes. So, who is Srimati Radharani? We said that she is the topmost worshipper, right? This is a bit esoteric. In our line, actually, in the ultimate sense, we're interested in Krishna. Why? Because by serving Krishna, Radharani is pleased. Right? In the deepest sense, in our line, you'll see that our acharyas, by and large, our acharyas are intimate servants, intimate maidservants of Srimati Radharani. It's a very, very deep, I mean, to be honest, in this lifetime, we've hit the jackpot. Just the fact that we know about this teaching and we have an opportunity, it's not even Vaikuntha. I mean, although Vaikuntha will be phenomenal, right? Let's be honest. Anywhere in the spiritual world will be phenomenal. But this is the most intimate, Madhurya laced. It's laced with sweetness. It's absorbed with sweetness. It's not even Aishvarya. It's not opulence, right? It's Madhurya. Huh? It is sometimes said that the followers of our line, when they go back to the spiritual world, they have two forms. Two. One form which engages in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and another form which engages in the pastimes with the divine couple. Right? Two forms. And that's a little esoteric, so we won't go into that too much. But this is the point. And so Srimati Radharani, she is the topmost Vaishnava. So sometimes scripture says that Lord Shiva is the topmost devotee. He is, but he's the topmost devotee in the material world. But when you take into account everything, when you look at Goloka Vrindavan, the topmost devotee is Radharani. And what does she do? She is the gatekeeper for service to Krishna. So what does the guru do? The guru is Radharani ultimately, right? Why is the guru Radharani? Because she is the person who knows how to please Krishna the most. You see, she's the person who knows how to please Krishna the most. And what does guru do? Guru is the person who helps us to please Krishna. So therefore, guru is a representative of Radharani, and Radharani is the ultimate guru in that regard. That's how these things all come together. Okay, I'm going to move on. Nandini, practicing doing your duty without being attached to result, as in the moment, it can be easy to forget, pull into play. Yes, there's an interesting, there's some things we can do about this actually. So we were in Germany. Yeah, I believe it was earlier this year for Satyananda Maharaj's Vyas Puja and Nityananda Trayodashi. And he mentioned that there's a prayer. I don't remember the prayer, but the principle I can share. Before you do something, you can actually just pray. Dear Srila Gurudev, dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, please allow me to do this activity as an offering to you. You see, this is how powerful the process is. Someone may say, you know what, I struggle to be detached from the results. Okay, fine. Why don't we just pray and ask the divine couple for help? We often think about it as if we have to do it by our own strength. No. We have to endeavor to get the blessings of those pure personalities who will bless us with that perfection. So this is what Satyananda Maharaj spoke about. And you can find, I'm sure you can find those classes online. So for example, you're engaged in a service, you can begin, before the service begins, you can actually say, please, dear Prabhupada, please allow me to do this as an offering to you without being attached to the results. You can ask him for the help. You can, and see what happens. See what happens. It's so amazing. He is there. I mean, I was speaking to one devotee. Recently. I mean, she's very advanced. I mean, what happened was we went to visit some devotees. This is months ago. And this person, they know this person, and this person popped over to visit them. I don't really know them that well, but I mean, my God, the realizations they were having is incredible. So they just started speaking about some of their experiences in Krishna consciousness. I was like, wow, intensely advanced. I mean, very much a recipient of their guru's mercy. And they told me once, they mentioned that they had been praying. They'd been praying for help in some area of their spiritual life. And, you know, they had a direct spiritual experience where it was very clear to them that, you know, Krishna's associates were ready to help, you know, it was that real. And they just mentioned it, and I was like, wow, of course. So we're not alone. Don't think that you don't think you have to get there by yourself. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. We do make endeavor though, okay? So the question comes up, do I surrender or do I have to do it? You surrender by doing. What does that mean? It means like this. I surrender to Krishna's instructions. Okay, what is Krishna's instructions? In the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Arjuna, fight. You do your duty and depend on me for the result. So if I actually have surrendered to Krishna, meaning that I surrendered to his instructions, then I have to act. I can't say I'm surrendered, but I don't do what he says. It's just like this. You have a doctor. You come to the doctor because you're ill. Okay, doctor, I'm ready to surrender to whatever you want. I'm going to surrender to you. Doctor says, yes, good. Surrender to me. Here's a prescription. Go to the chemist, buy this product, and take it 2 times a day. And it's like, well, I don't know. Like, should I go to the chemist or should I surrender to my doctor? Yeah, you surrender to the doctor by doing what he says, and he says go to the chemist. So you can't say you're surrendered to the doctor, but you don't follow his instructions. Surrender to the doctor means to follow his instructions. Yeah, that's the point. If I've surrendered, it means I do what I was told. So surrender includes the instructions of the person you're surrendering to. So very simple. Do I surrender to Krishna or do I leave it? Or, you know, do I surrender to Krishna or do I act? You surrender to Krishna by doing what he tells you to do. Okay, and we can extend that because we're talking about Guru. We find out what Krishna wants by the spiritual master, by the association of devotees. Okay, let's move on. Sylvia, how realistic and helpful is it to be 100% staunch on oneself without becoming too mechanical? No, the two things are not in contradiction. Staunch just means that you follow properly. It's that simple. Yeah, it just means that you follow properly. Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with being mechanical, right? Because if I follow properly, as we said earlier, I also want to understand, why am I praying these prayers? What does it mean when I'm saying these samsara dava nadadli the local? What am I actually singing? Right? I mean, it's so deep. We'll go to the prayers we say to Tulsi Maharani every morning. I mean, this is so deep, right? Please make me one of your maidservants. I mean, really? Like, this is the prayer we say every morning. Prabhupada has given us that prayer. It's so incredibly deep, but we just, you know, we're just there in the morning, we have no idea what's going on. We're just reciting and then we go away. It's very deep. We're actually petitioning the Lord for something. That's what we're doing. We're petitioning the Lord for something. And if you just become conscious, it takes on a whole new meaning. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. It's gone Redbridge. You said we should listen to who we are inspired by as Casey as an ocean, but sometimes I feel it's nice to listen. I feel I listen to nice soft classes, but when I listen to heavy classes, it hits hard, and these are what I need for sure. Also, should we also see, okay, let me take this first one. So I have a challenge to you about this. The issue isn't whether the class is soft or heavy. The issue is whether it causes you to surrender. You see, it's very interesting. I know devotees who love, you know, hard classes, right? So-called hard classes, but they don't change. They don't do anything. It's like, yeah, that was a hard class, man. Yeah, you know, the class, yeah, it just really gave it to them straight. It's like, okay, next year, same stuff. Same thing, same behavior. It's like, okay, so you love these hard classes, but you've not actually made any progress. So what's the point of this hard class? It's not about hard or soft. Are you actually progressing in spiritual life? That's the point. So if the so-called hard class, so I can see who it's from now, Rupeshra. Thank you, actually. It's good to hear from you. If it makes you progress, that's the point. So it's not hard or soft. It's, are you progressing? That's the point. That's the point. Am I progressing? If the hard class makes you progress, then listen to all the hard classes you want. But I emphasize that because there's other people, they progress by having a class which is of a different feel. Okay? That's the point. We often in spiritual life, we have to get to the essence of it, right? I'm doing something that's really difficult in spiritual life. Okay, fine. Yeah, I'm doing something really difficult. Okay, but are you progressing? You know, he's doing something that's really easy. Okay, but have you noticed he's progressing more than you are, right? So is it that it was hard or easy, or is it that we're meant to progress? What's the essence of it? And then you can also add to that, what's hard for one person may be easy for someone else. What you consider to be a hard class, other people may think, you know what, that's hard? You think that's hard? You haven't heard the classes I listen to, dude. You know, it is like that. You'll see sometimes there are gurus. Let's be very real about this. There's some gurus, when they preach in India, they're a bit more gung-ho, right? And in that particular culture, they're like, yeah, this is a great class. And someone else who gives a different class to that same group, they think, I didn't really feel it was so fired up, you know? So part of being selfless is what's necessary to help me to move forward. And if you're preaching, what's going to help the people I'm preaching to? It's that simple. Hard, soft is not so much an issue. It's whether they actually help you to move forward. So whatever class helps you to move forward, that's the class that we're meant to be going for. Okay. And the last part, also, should we also assume that we should be listening to Prabhupada? Yes. Yes, definitely. Definitely. Whoever else's books you read, you should read Prabhupada's books along with that. Whoever else's classes you listen to, you should also listen to Prabhupada's classes. It really is important. And you'll gain a lot from it. If you listen to Prabhupada's classes and you read Prabhupada's books, it will help you to understand whoever else's books and classes that you're listening to. That's why you should also do it. It has an amplifying effect. By hearing Prabhupada, you understand if they're bona fide, and generally they are, if you hear Prabhupada's classes and read Prabhupada's books, it will allow you to gain more from everyone else's classes and everyone else's books as well. Because whatever they're giving is on the foundation of what Prabhupada has given. Yeah. Okay, so just to answer that, let me just see if there's any more questions. Yes, so Nitai Mata, yes. So in terms of the levels of devotional service in transcendence, so up to Asakti, our devotional service is in the mode of goodness. It's still high, very high level, but devotional service in transcendence begins at Bhava, actually. Yeah, it begins at Bhava. At Nishta, devotional service is predominantly in the mode of goodness, and then Ruchi, it's even more in goodness. Asakti, it's the most in goodness, and then at Bhava, it tips over. At Bhava, devotional service is actually on the platform of transcendence, because Bhava is Sadhya, right? So up to Bhava, it's Sadhana. At Bhava and Prema, it's Sadhya, devotional or Siddha. It's perfection. It's devotional service at the perfected platform. Yeah, anyway, that's a whole topic, but yeah. And to your point, Deepa, I think when Rupeshwara said about hard classes, it means classes which may be a little bit more blunt, a bit more direct. What happens sometimes also is that there are some classes which are a bit more technical, right? So they'll start to break down all the technicalities so we know exactly where we are. And there'll be some classes which are a bit more general. And this mirrors something that's given by our Acaryas. My wife knows the specific Acaryas. I can't remember the two, but Prabhupada, what he does in his writings, he sometimes explains things in a general sense or a casual sense. and he sometimes explains things in a technical sense. Both things are there in the scriptures, you see, and it's actually given by different acharyas. So even understanding what bhakti is, there are different definitions of bhakti. There are technical definitions of bhakti, and if you go by the technical definitions, you actually feel, you know what, I haven't really even started devotional service. Some acharyas explain that bhakti proper begins at nishta, right? So that's more your technical definition of bhakti. But there are other more general definitions of bhakti where anything that you do for the pleasure of the Lord, right? It's more general. So, you know, if I eat a cookie to please Krishna, I'm engaged in devotional service. So there are more general definitions of bhakti as well. So yeah, just to kind of explain that. Okay, so I think we've taken all the questions. So yeah, I hope that was in some way useful to the devotees, and yeah, thank you. So I want to encourage you, learn these prayers. These prayers have been they've been, of all the prayers, and Prabhupada knows so many, he selected specific prayers for us, right? We last time spoke about Guru Vandana. Today we spoke about Guruvastakam by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So if you don't know the prayers, I want to encourage you, learn the prayers. Learn the prayers. Learn the prayers. Know them off by heart and know the meaning. So that next time you recite the prayers, either in your morning program at home or anytime, you can recite the prayers anytime. Or you're at the temple reciting the prayers, that you're not just, but you actually, you're reciting them. You know the prayer. You know what you're actually saying. Your spiritual life will take off. And this is how we go from mechanical devotional service to higher stages of devotional service. Yeah. Okay, and thank you everyone for attending. Okay, can you please send the link to join your sessions? I think Rajanath Gopal is on the call. Maybe you can make that link available in the chat window, please, Rajanath Gopal. And thank you very much. It's great to see all of you, and thank you for joining. Sorry, I think someone was about to speak.
Send me the email address because there's no general link for it. So if they post the email address on the channel, or they could privately message me, then I can add them.
Okay, yes, if you could privately message Prabhu, Rajanath Gopal Prabhu, or pass on your email, then I think you'll be included in the email chain for the different events as well. Okay, thank you. It's great to see all of you. Even better to be able to try to offer some service to you guys. Sincerely hope that you're doing well in your spiritual life, as always, and we really look forward to serving you better, hopefully, and connecting with you again at a future program. And as always, we'll send out the email communication for the next session, and we'll take a different prayer from the morning program as well. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Okay, stay well, stay blessed. Hare Krishna.